Welcome to the IVF Abroad podcast for people who are struggling with infertility and trying to conceive and who are facing more obstacles than options when it comes to having fertility testing or treatment in their home countries. Alongside other experts, I will share, educate and empower you on your journey and help you to learn more about going abroad for advanced fertility testing and treatments like IVF and egg donation. I'm Emma Haslam, your host, now mum of one, and the go-to expert in fertility treatment abroad. Since the birth of our son in 2018, I have made it my mission to make fertility treatment more informed, transparent, accessible, supported and affordable for more people. And I help people just like you to become unstuck, to find a best fit clinic that truly meets their needs and to have fertility treatment on their terms and timescales so they can achieve their dreams of growing their families. And I'm here now to help you too. Be sure to check out the free resources in the show notes for more help after listening to today's episode. Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of the IVF Abroad podcast with me, your host, Emma Haslam. Now, today's episode, I think, is a really important one. And I'm super pleased to be joined by my client, Zoe, who is very much still on her trying to conceive journey. Yet she has kindly offered to come on my podcast, even while still in the trenches, because she and I felt that it was so important to share where she's up to on her journey. So I'd like to just first of all share a little bit about what Zoe and her husband Ben told me when they came to work with me before I then shut up and hand over to let Zoe tell us more. So Zoe and her husband Ben had been trying to conceive for about 6 years. They started trying after they got married, kind of casually trying, and nothing was happening. Now, I know Zoe won't mind me sharing this with you, but Zoe has a bigger body and is happy in a bigger body. But as kind of time went on and things weren't happening, she did begin to wonder whether weight might be part of the problem, even though really deep down she knew that it wasn't. But she'd shared that her weight had started creeping on over the years and she was questioning whether or not she might have PCOS or whether something else might be going on. Zoe went to see her GP and actually had a positive experience who didn't naturally blame it on BMI. And then from there, she got a referral and her and her husband, Ben, had some basic baseline testing that is offered on the NHS. And from that point, they were told there was nothing wrong. It was unexplained infertility, but that if they wanted any further help from the NHS, Zoe had to get her BMI down to 30 or under 30 and to come back. So they were sent away. And over the following months, various things happened. And within that time, Zoe lost 4 stone. But still, that wasn't considered enough for NHS treatment. And then after years of trying, coupled with the kind of concerns about the costs of private treatment like IVF in the UK, they were just both left with unanswered questions about why they'd never conceived. So when they came to me, their questions about my help were not around, let's go and have IVF, let's rush into treatment. It was like, we've been trying for years. This is the background that I've just shared. And Zoe's never been pregnant. Like, we think there's something going on. How do we get clear answers before perhaps considering IVF? So in this episode, we're going to talk about how it feels when you're told that you've got unexplained infertility, when, you're told nothing's wrong. How it feels to kind of navigate the emotional impact of BMI thresholds when you're trying to conceive. Why thorough diagnostics matter so much. And then what happened when Zoe and Ben went to a BMI inclusive clinic that was suitable for their needs. And then what clarity they got when they got there and what that feels like after years of uncertainty and years of being told there's nothing wrong and you need to lose weight. So, Zoe, thank you so much for being here and for being so brave and willing to share your story with us while you're still in it, because that's not easy.
Oh, no, thank you for asking me. I feel like I want everyone to know, because there must be so many people who have just had to sit with unexplained infertility and never get to where we've got to. And also everyone who goes to IVF and it doesn't work as well. Like there's, what happened to us could help so many people, but it's just not a thing that happens in the UK. So I think it's really important that people know, and hopefully it might give some people hope, even though I'm still on the journey.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go back then to like the early part of your fertility journey. So I know you shared with me that after you got married, you came off the pill. At what point would you say that you started to wonder, why is nothing happening?
So before we went to the NHS, the year before, we actually started the adoption journey, but we started to like inquire with adoption agencies because it wasn't happening. And at that point, I was very like, I don't think I can do IVF. I don't think I'm mentally strong enough. I don't think I would be able to lose weight to help to like be able to do it in the UK. I don't know like what to do to go abroad. And yeah, we went down the adoption route. But we didn't get very far. So it was just after COVID. And so social workers were under a lot of pressure. They were still doing a lot of Zoom meetings. We had to take a lot of time off work to like accommodate meetings and stuff. And it wasn't the right fit for us. So a year later, again, another year of trying, we were like, right, we need to just go and check that everything is where it should be and things are okay. The reason why I went to the GP at first was to rule out PCOS because I've been overweight all my life. I have facial hair. I've had facial hair since I was like 12. And whilst I was asymptomatic in terms of like periods and pain, I was like, I don't know if everything is okay. I don't know if I've never had any tests. So that's why we went again. It was very much like when we came to you, let's make sure that we're not going from a standing start here, because if we keep trying, time runs on, but actually going to be able to get pregnant, then there's no point. I'm very much that kind of person. Like, I think it's called bottom up thinking. Like, what's the end result that we want? Okay, how do we get there? Rather than just trying to work things out. So, and then for various reasons, it was another year until I started losing weight. And then like another year until we came to see you. I think we got in touch with you in the September last year. So probably at the beginning of summer, I was very mindful of the fact that in September I was turning 40. And I was like, right, if we don't get pregnant soon, I'm going to be 41 before I have whatever baby might arrive. I'm going to be 41 before that happens. So I said to Ben, I know we had said like, we don't want to go down the IVF route, but the way that I feel right now is I will always regret not trying every single thing we could to try and have a baby. Because in our heads, adoption still isn't off the table, but in our heads, there's kind of no time restraint on starting the adoption process. Whereas there is a time restraint on me being able to get pregnant. So,
yeah.
Probably the beginning of last summer, we were like, right, okay, we've lost all this weight, great. We're still not eligible for any NHS help. And because I knew you, I was like, would you be happy to explore going abroad? And Ben's very like, yeah, you know best, whatever. He knows that I'm like a proper deep researcher. I wouldn't ever suggest I didn't have like the plan already in place. So, because even though I'd lost that weight and he'd lost that weight, there still isn't a clinic in the UK that I could go to, in spite of losing all of that weight. I think there's one now that I would be able to go to, but I still would need to lose another 1.5 stone to go to some of the clinics that are okay dealing with higher BMIs. It's just not an option for me here.
And what you don't want either is to have to pick a clinic just because they've got a higher BMI limit when it might not be the right clinic for you. And that's the problem, is it? We are starting to see, one or two places in the UK offer treatment to higher BMIs, which is great. However, it doesn't mean to say that they are good clinics necessarily, or the right clinic for everybody. And that's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know you've always talked about being happy in your body, Zoe. And this has never been about size for you. But when did weight first enter the kind of fertility conversation for you?
Honestly, it was when I went to have the test with the NHS. So 23, October 23. The first time anyone mentioned my weight was when we sat with the consultant's junior, and we'd never met her. In fact, do you know what? My whole NHS experience was just not great. Nothing really happened, but it just was very like tick boxy. So we went for the results and she was like, there's nothing wrong, lose weight, come back. That was it.
No unhelpful.
But because when we were going through the adoption process, we had to have a medical. So we went to the doctor then, and it was my GP again. My GP is fantastic. And he was like, why are they asking about your BMI? I was like, I don't know. And he's like, I don't know either. It literally has no relevance to your ability to be able to look after a child. Like, I don't understand, and I'm sorry that you're being asked about it. So the reason why I actually started to lose weight was for fertility. But the reason why it all kickstarted was I went to the same GP to get a referral for an ADHD and autism diagnosis. So he was talking to me and he was like, what's happened? Because it was a year later when I went for this. So this was in November 24. And he was like, what's happening with your fertility? Because like that was the last time I saw you. And I told him, and he was like, I'm so sorry that was your experience. But if that is what you want to do, if your goal is to get pregnant and you have to lose weight, he said, I'm not saying that you need to lose weight. I don't believe you need to lose weight to get pregnant. But if that is what the NHS is saying, like if that's what the doctors are saying, then why aren't you using a GLP-1 now? I know people have like mixed feelings about GLP-1, so Mounjaro injections. And I was like, well, I've not actually spoken to any medical professional. All I've seen is videos on TikTok about these people using it. And I just don't know. I don't know like the legitimacy of it. And he was like, if I could, and at this point I was nearly 20 stone. So like I was severely morbidly obese. And he said, unfortunately, the NHS Trust don't prescribe a GLP-1 for weight loss. If you were diabetic, there's a chance that I could get you on it, but you're not. So I can't prescribe it. If you need a medical professional who knows you to tell you that you should be on this drug, you should be on this drug. This is me telling you should do it. If your goal is to get pregnant and you kind of want to go, F you, it's not my weight, so you need to lose weight to be able to do that, going on this drug. And I was like, okay. And so that's what I did. Like I went home that night and ordered it. And it was because my doctor had told me to. It wasn't because I was like, I need to lose weight. It was kind of like a last thing of like, it's not my weight. I'm losing weight. Just, it's not my weight. And so yeah, that was kind of where the whole thing came from. It was almost like a contradictory thing of like, I know it's not because I'm overweight. Like,
I'm going to prove it.
Yeah,
exactly. So how did it feel when you were told by the junior consultant on the NHS that there was nothing wrong and basically come back when your BMI gets to under 30? When at this point, as you just shared, that you were 20 stone, so your BMI will have been, I imagine, a lot higher than that, like, and just sent away. That's it. Full stop. Closes the book.
So it was kind of like, oh, right, okay. I mean, I'll be honest with you, the way my brain is, I was like, all right, there's nothing wrong with us. I still didn't think, I've never thought it's my weight. Like, I've never thought my weight is a problem. So, yeah. And it was funny, actually. We got referred for psychosexual counselling, which I found hilarious.
I don't think I know what that is.
I don't either, really, because we only went to one session. So basically, the reason why we stopped for a year is because Ben's dad passed away.
Yeah.
So he passed away in March 24. So by the time we'd got our referral through for the counselling, we went for one session, booked our next one, and then Colin passed away. So I was like, excuse me, I rang and I was like, we're not in a place to be doing this at the moment because Ben needs counselling himself. Like, he doesn't need to be with me for this. And then we just like never went back to it. Because I was just like, how's that going to help? Like, we have worked very hard on our communication. We talk very openly and we're very good at that. So like, it's not something that's going to help us. But I think because I don't know, like maybe I've never felt shame because of my body. Like I've never hated how I looked. I'm very lucky. I've never experienced any of the things that people talk about when being in a bigger body. I've never really had anyone shout stuff at me. I've never had, and maybe it's just because I don't notice it. Like I'd never notice people if people would look at me or anything like that. Okay, I think I had like reverse body dysmorphia because I never thought I looked bit like I knew I was overweight, but I never felt like I looked massive or any of those words that you would just use to describe someone in a derogatory way. I never felt that way about myself. So,
well, you were happy, weren't you? You were happy with your body as it was, and maybe
exactly.
that's why a lot of people aren't. And therefore, maybe, as you said, perhaps they notice things.
Yeah, probably. I also, like, I'd been overweight and bigger since I was probably 10. I've never been, I think the smallest size I've ever been was a 14 in my memory. Even when I was 12, I was wearing adult clothes. Like, I've always been larger. So it's not even like I could remember and be like, oh, when I was smaller, because in my head, I've never been smaller. So I kind of just refused to accept that weight was a reason why I wouldn't be able to get pregnant, especially because I know so many people who were the same size as me or bigger who have been pregnant and got pregnant. So yeah, I think the only negative experience I had was with that junior consultant. And I understand that it's because she was busy. We weren't really a case for her. It was literally just to tell us that there was nothing wrong. You know, like it's not on her to really give us any options because there weren't any in the NHS.
But I think telling people nothing is wrong is really misleading, isn't it?
Oh yes,
so
100%.
The NHS can't do any more for you. I feel that there could have been a further conversation to support you and Ben to say, like, with the testing that we've been able to offer you on the NHS, we haven't found anything. However, these are very basic, very basic baseline tests. There are lots of other tests out there that you could perhaps explore privately, but you know, just to kind of say to you, there's nothing wrong, off you go. And like you said, you were like, oh, okay, there's nothing wrong. That perhaps maybe gave you false hope. And by saying come back when your BMI is under 30, and again, I understand the constraints of the NHS, but that is, to me, saying to you, there's nothing wrong, but actually, if you lose weight, that's a problem, Zoe. You lose that weight, and then we help you with IVF. And I do think that there's a responsibility there for doctors to be having a wider conversation with people. And also you potentially, like, you're sending somebody away without options, no clearer. And it's just like, toodaloo, off you go. Lose a massive weight and then come back and then we'll help you, which doesn't always happen anyway. I did that, lost a massive amount of weight, and then the flipping rules changed. So, you know, telling people that nothing is wrong is, first of all, incorrect, because there wouldn't be something. And we put our faith in those doctors and we accept what they say. And I'm not saying we shouldn't trust doctors, and I'm not trying to slag off the NHS, but I do think that she could have spent just a few minutes giving you a little bit more information so that when you came away, you could be like, okay, so they haven't found anything, which is quite different to there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And, you know, the reason she's mentioning BMI is because on the NHS, they are the rules. You may find other providers that would treat you at a higher BMI. You know, she could have said things like that to you. And yet she didn't.
No, that's very true. It's that nuance, isn't it? Because I didn't even know at the time what to even ask or look for. I hadn't really done much research. I didn't know all of the different things, all of the different reasons as to why you might not be able to get pregnant or hold a pregnancy. Like, I need to be super clear. Like, because it's important to the later on in the story, I've never had a positive test. Like, it's not like I've miscarried. It's not like I've had a chemical pregnancy or an ectopic pregnancy. I've never had a positive test. So, because I know there are women out there who, can get pregnant, but can't hold a pregnancy. But that's not me. So I feel like that, it's a different part of the conversation, like, rather than, because, we'll get onto it. But like, I didn't know there were reasons, I didn't know there was options for us to go and explore why that might be happening. It was just like, it was more of a binary response than a scale. So like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly. But I don't think that was your responsibility, Zoe, because you're not a doctor or a medical professional. And I think that was her responsibility. Yes, the NHS can only do what the NHS can do, but she could still have given you different information or the nuance around it so that you have that further understanding. Because how many people, I mean, I hear this a lot as well, right? How many people will be told there's nothing wrong and then waste their precious time and, because being in limbo with all this stuff, as you know, is awful. It's really hard.
Yeah.
It takes a lot out of everything. So to be told nothing's wrong, people are potentially walking around wasting time on a journey that is time sensitive.
That's 100% my biggest. Like, we could have done all of this 2 years earlier than we did and given ourselves 2 more years. And that's the most heartbreaking thing, I think, of all of it.
And that was the same for us. Like, we wasted two years as well. So 2 years of being in the trenches of one of the most miserable times of my life. And I just think by the whole BMI conversation, when it's just delivered like that with no context around it, she could have told you that there might be places privately in the UK that could help you. You were just sent away like we were and like so many other people are with so little information, and at the moment to get referrals, if you get referred even to a consultant, it's months, it can be years to even get to that point. And then people build themselves up and then they're like, oh, and they don't know what to do next and they're stuck. So, when you're told nothing is wrong, often what people then do is they continue to try naturally for long. And often it's wasting people's time. And I just think that, there's more that they could do to support people, especially when they're not going to be able to deliver any more support through the NHS. It's like, you're there then at the appointment for the sake of an extra couple of minutes. I just think there's more that they could do.
Honestly, it was like we walked in and she was like, I'm seeing you today on behalf of whoever it was. We've had all your tests back. They're all normal. Blah, blah, blah. Off you go. So there was no like, I think she was just doing the motions. But yeah, the biggest regret is like that it's just wasted another 2 years. And I'm not saying that we would have gone there and then. Obviously losing Colin was a big deal, but might have gone a year earlier. Like, we might have started this a year earlier, without me losing weight. And
the reason I've laboured and gone on about that point, I suppose, is because I've heard so many different people come to me and have various variations of the same story as you, Zoe, at the point of the kind of the news being delivered, being pretty much given that same standard line. And I can't believe that every single one of those doctors won't know that the very, very basic tests, when these are, obstetricians, gynecologists, well-trained doctors, they will know that what the NHS offers is very basic, and we understand why. But I just think that the conversation just tends to be too much on kind of BMI and too much on there's nothing wrong.
And also just the fact that the basic tests are so basic. They are, did you ovulate this month? So basically the tests take place over like 3 weeks before you have your appointment. So it's, did you ovulate this month? All your AMH level. And I also had a ultrascan to look at my ovaries. And I was offered the dye test.
And Ben probably had a very basic semen analysis, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
And that's it, yeah. So there was no like, it's not like a, like the day 21 test it's called, isn't it? Like that test, it literally is, did you ovulate this month? Yes. It's not, are you regularly ovulating? Like, was it normal? It wasn't, it's again, very binary. Like, did you do it? Yeah. Okay. Next. it only gives you a snapshot of that month, not of your wider fertility as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously your GP recommended GLP-1. You decided to go on a GLP-1 to maybe stick to your fingers and go, I know that's not, it's not the problem. Was also part of you thinking, well, if we do decide to have IVF, then this is going to help us to qualify, because you lost 4 stone, which is amazing. But I know you've mentioned before that you would have needed to lose about 10 in total.
Yeah.
Like, how did that feel? Were you at that point thinking that your end destination would be IVF in the UK and that you were going to have to try and lose 10 stone?
No, I just could not conceive of the thought of losing 10 stone. Like, I don't even think my body would be able to do that. So my actual goal was to get under 35 for my BMI so that I might be able to explore Clomid, but inducing ovulation, basically. That was my thought. There was still something in the back of my head that was like, there's something else going on. Maybe I'm not ovulating properly, because I know I've explained to you before, I've never really been able to catch ovulation on a ovulation stick. I've never, and it might be that I just have a big surge and then it goes and I'm just not testing at the right time, but I've tried. Like, I've tried for so many months.
We tried.
So yeah, my goal was to get under 35 so that I could explore the conversation of drugs. So, like, can we at least try with something like Clomid to see if that helps? That was always my goal. At the time, IVF wasn't even in the conversation. We weren't going to explore it. And I was like, I don't think I'm mentally strong enough to go down that route. So that was my goal in the losing of the weight, to get my BMI under 35.
And then after you lost the 4 stone, you got to, was it about 36?
36, yeah.
Yeah. And was it at that point then you just felt it just wasn't going down any further to get to the point of going on to Clomid?
Yeah, so I got to a point in like June, July, and my weight just stuck. It wasn't going down any further. I'd done lots of things to try and get it to going again, and it just wasn't. And I was like, I know that when I do try to conceive, I'm going to have to come off this drug, because you can't take it when you're trying to get pregnant, or when you're pregnant. So I was like, I can't keep trying to lose the weight. Time is ticking on. I'm 40 in a few months. I'm at 36. And so me and Ben had the conversation of like, okay, we probably should start exploring IVF, because I feel like basically my attitude had changed quite a lot. And I was like, I will always regret not trying it if we don't. Even if we just try one round and it doesn't work, we can say we tried everything we could to have a baby and it just wasn't in our path. Whereas if we didn't try IVF, then we couldn't legitimately say that. And that always would have played on my mind. And I actually think probably would have sent me a little bit doolally. So yeah, we started having the conversation around the July. And then I got in touch with you, I think around September time.
So at that point, were you thinking about exploring clinics in the UK privately, or did you just already sort of started thinking we're going to be going abroad?
Well, luckily I knew you. So like the reason why I knew IVF abroad was an option and like a totally legit option was because of you. I don't know that I would have known without knowing you already. Because it just wasn't even on my mind that it was a possibility. Like I did, although actually having talked about it, one of my friends, her best friend went to Spain, and I know that now. So it might have got to the point where, although like I wasn't being very open with my friends or anyone, like no one knew that we were going through all of this. So I probably wouldn't have found out. I looked so many times for like BMI inclusive clinics, etc., etc. I inquired with a few and like never got a response. And that was before I even mentioned my BMI. So yeah, like when we decided IVF was a potential, it was always that we would go abroad. I just never even considered it in the UK because I just know how much more expensive it is, and it is a cost thing. But it's too expensive.
And it's wild that you reached out and literally didn't hear anything back. That is...
Oh, I know. I mean, like we're, I don't know, nearly a year later and I've still not heard anything back.
That is crazy, isn't it? And for most people who don't live in London, people generally have one or two fertility clinics within, let's say, an hour's drive of where they live, which tends to be the kind of like perimeter that people would be willing to kind of travel if they're going to be near their home and stuff. And that leaves you with so little choice, doesn't it? And then add in having a higher BMI, and then you're like, if I've got to go to London, you've got to factor in travel, you've got to factor in accommodation, and actually then you've got to factor in the costs of doing it in the UK. And then you think to yourself, well, why am I doing that? And just for complete transparency, I know Zoe because I was a client of Zoe's, and that's how she knows me and my business. And then Zoe is a paid client of mine.
Yes.
So that's how we know each other, isn't it?
Yeah.
So obviously you knew a bit about my business and me, so you had that trust and things already. But was there any worries between, like, I know Ben didn't know me at all. Did like either of you feel worried at all about the going abroad bit? Safety, logistics, a new system. Like, did you have any fears around that?
No. We don't align with a lot of the way that we think. I'm very much a deep thinker. Ben is like, what will happen, will happen. But when it comes to things like this, both of us move forward with curiosity. Like, everything we do, it's like, okay, well, if it doesn't work out, we'll have a story. Like, that's always how we think of things. The only thing that probably bothered me was, because I didn't even consider it until you told us, was the coming back to the UK and having to explain to doctors here what happened over there, like, and then not being that congruency across everything. So that was probably the only thing, but I trusted you, and I trusted that you wouldn't send us somewhere that was going to be dodgy. And actually, as soon as we got there and like got to the clinic, it was very obvious what a professional operation it is, and the amount of people that were there and the amount of different types of couples that were there. I didn't have any worry at all, really.
And do you think, like, how did you feel about, because it's quite was a very personal thing to talk about. And obviously you knew me a bit because we'd worked together, but you didn't know me really, really well. Like, was it a bit weird for you and Ben to rock up on a call with me and like open up and tell me all of this really like vulnerable, deeply personal stuff, and to put your trust in me to basically give you your options and my guidance on what I thought was best for you to do?
No. Like, it's that Ben is, so Ben's a type 1 diabetic. So anything medical, literally anything, not even anything to do with his diabetes, anything medical, he's so open about, because he's just like, if you're not open, you're not going to get the treatment or the results that you want. So you have to be as open as you can be and as honest as you can be. For me, actually, I found it easier because I knew you, because I tend to be an oversharer if I don't know someone, to like try and get them on side. But I felt like I didn't need to do that with you because you had already seen the way that I am. Even though you didn't know any personal stuff about me, it didn't necessarily feel like I was having to get a first impression over, because you already knew me. So So no, I wasn't worried or bothered. I knew that it was a personal relationship from my side rather than a professional relationship from my side. Whereas when we've worked together before, obviously I've been the professional and you've been the personal one. So like, it was almost that exchange of power so it was actually a lot easier because you already knew me. So I wasn't having to be like, oh, and by the way, I'm autistic. By the way, I've got ADHD. By the way, like that, all of that was gone because we already knew each other.
Yeah. And I wonder as well, I think because I've been through this process myself, I think I'm very aware of like how difficult it can be for some people to turn up, especially when they're a complete stranger to me on a video call and be like, hey, we've like literally just met and I'm telling you all this really personal, private stuff. But I'm glad that you felt like that.
Also, it's great that you do this podcast, because I feel like if people are hearing you a lot, they will feel like they know you, even if you don't know them.
Yeah, that's true. And I'll sometimes get people say, oh my God, you sound exactly like you sound on your podcast, or exactly like you sound on your Instagram stories. I'm like, well, yeah, that's because it's exactly how I am.
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys have told me everything that we've shared so far. And I said to you guys that I felt that your next step, if you agreed, was really thorough testing to get to the bottom of why you had never been pregnant after trying for 6 years. I said to you, I agreed that I didn't think that it was going to be your weight. I am not a doctor. I am not medically trained, but I've helped hundreds of people. So I see lots of people with higher BMIs. I work with lots of people with unexplained infertility. So I see patterns, I see trends, and I see results as well. So I felt that really thorough testing with a BMI inclusive clinic, with a clinic that were experts in unexplained infertility was going to be the right step for you guys. But it wasn't going to be super cheap. It was going to be a lot cheaper than if you would get all of those tests done in the UK. And you certainly wouldn't have been able to get them done as quickly. So it's going to be a lot cheaper. But if you're going to go down this route, you were probably going to need about $3,000 for your tests and then travel, accommodation, etc. So I think I gave you a budget of about $400. So when I suggested that, like, how did you feel? Because I feel like that's like quite a lot to take in and a lot of trust to put in me to then go, okay, do you know what? Yeah, we're gonna do that.
I think because we didn't even know that it was a possibility, we were like, oh, right, okay. And we didn't take very long to decide because Ben's a very positive person. I'm not as positive as him, but he was like, look, we might as well spend this money and not need IVF than need IVF, go down the IVF route immediately and then it not work.
Yeah.
Either way, we're spending $4,000. Like, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, it didn't take us very long to decide, but it was like, oh, okay, so we could get an answer. And like our primary objective has always been find out why I'm not getting pregnant, not let's have a baby. So that was like the main goal. And which might seem odd to people that you would go to an IVF clinic to find out why you're not getting pregnant, but it was definitely the right option for us. Mm-hmm.
So when we were chatting about testing and stuff, like I really heard loud and clear that actually you guys didn't even know if you wanted to do IVF. And I know that you had concerns around what if we spend all this money on testing, Emma, and we don't get an answer? What if there isn't an answer? And I was like, there will be an answer. And I said to you, didn't I, that the clinic that you were considering going to, that they'd never not found the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's always something going on. Like people don't try for so long.
Yeah.
And do all the, the right things, like you said, you're doing your ovulation sticks. We do all the things, don't we? And like, when you're trying for that long, there is something going on and that needs to be uncovered. And I explained to you as well that sometimes people don't even need IVF. Like if they can get to the root cause of what's going on, sometimes these are really quick things to fix. Sometimes they're not, but to get answers is super important. So then you can make informed decisions on your next steps, because what you didn't want to do is be rushing through to IVF for something that may never work, spending money unnecessarily, when actually you wanted answers for the next steps. And then in an ideal world, to be able to try naturally. But I think it's hard for people. I think linking back to that conversation you had with the doctor, when people are told by a doctor, there's nothing wrong. We've done tests. There's nothing wrong. Sometimes people understandably have a hard time when I make that suggestion because even though it's cheaper than in the UK and fast, it's still need to spend, right? If you then need IVF, even though it can be beneficial and give you a higher chance of IVF working. And people will say to me sometimes, yeah, but the doctor said there's nothing wrong. We've had some tests in the NHS and there's nothing wrong. And that's really hard because I'm not a doctor and don't proclaim to be. But like for you guys, it was quite a quick decision. But I think for some people, they don't make that decision, and that's obviously completely up to them. It's my job to give them options and thoughts and for them to decide. But how important do you think doing diagnostic testing is?
I think, like, honestly, I think if you've maybe been going 6 months and you haven't got pregnant, I think that should be the next step. It's everything that happened to me. The doctor at the clinic actually said, you never would have got pregnant on your own and IVF would never have worked. So, I mean, you can't get more black and white than that. Like, it was never going to happen. Like, it wasn't going to happen ever. So, and, in 2 years before, if I'd had IVF and it hadn't worked, they wouldn't have worked. They wouldn't have looked to see why, because I wouldn't have had a miscarriage, or let alone multiple miscarriages. So, and there's so many reasons as to why you A, might not get pregnant, and B, might not be able to stay pregnant, that just are not found out. And if you are not able to get pregnant or stay pregnant, there is a reason, and clinics can find that reason. And I think if more people knew about diagnostic testing, then there'd be a lot more pregnancies.
And how important do you think it is to have the right clinic for your needs?
Oh yeah, 100%. With the clinic that we went to, it was very much like, they said to us, our goal is that you do have a baby, and we find out why that's not happening. So it wasn't like, they basically were saying, our goal isn't for you to have IVF. Like, that's what they were saying.
Yes.
So, if IVF...
It's refreshing as well.
Yeah, so even though they're an IVF clinic, they weren't pushing us to be like, the next step is IVF. They actually sent us away and were like, go and keep trying and come back to us when you're ready. So, yeah, I think, every clinic has its specialty. This one in particular was great for diagnostics, and that's why we went there.
Yeah. And the 3 I gave you all could help with kind of unexplained infertility and testing. But I also think, like, we don't know what we don't know, do we? And like, when we started our journey, we just thought all fertility clinics did the same things. Because why would I do it differently? And what I've come to see and learn over the last, 9 years since we began our journey, and then, come into founding your IVF Abroad, is that actually that's just not the case. As you've mentioned, some don't specialise in anything, some specialise in different things. What we're saying is that not every clinic everywhere, UK, abroad, will do the same thing. So wherever you choose to have your treatment, if that's here in the UK, if that's abroad, you really need to be working out if it's the right clinic for your needs, the right clinic for your budget, the right clinic for your personality as well, in terms of the kind of care that you expect and that you would want to receive, so that whatever the result, you go through that process having the best experience that you can have. And so you look back with no regrets, kind of irrespective of the result. So when you had your first interaction with a clinic, which was an online consultation, wasn't it? How would you say that conversation with the doctor initially compared to your NHS experience?
But the first thing they said, so I was about to turn, or I had turned 40 maybe, and my husband was 40, 41. And the first thing they said was, we need to work out why this young, vibrant couple can't have a baby. And I was like, oh, in the UK, I'd be like, why this geriatric woman can't get pregnant? And age just wasn't a thing. Like, age, not, and to be honest with you, the only reason I'm bothered about age is because of biology. It's not like I'm not bothered about being an old mum or anything like that. But it's just the biological thing of, but it was very like, there is a reason, we will find it.
So, and they made the recommendations. Obviously, they'd had looked at all of your notes and everything, anything that you had to share with them, they'd looked at. And I presume BMI didn't come up?
No.
So again, matching you to clinics where I knew that the only reason BMI would ever be mentioned is if it actually was a problem. Because if it is a problem, we do need to know that. But what we don't need is people just saying, computer says no, or lecturing about our BMI, or blaming it on BMI when that is not the case.
Yeah.
So their recommendations were to come out to Greece, to have a variety of tests done quickly, so you didn't have to be there for a long period of time. And then you obviously had a more in-depth consultation with the doctor that you met on the video call, didn't you? To kind of go through everything. So, can you walk us through what it was like when you went to the clinic?
Yes. So we got to the clinic, and we went. First of all, we had some bloods done. And that was to test. That was for genetic testing. It was to check that we had a full set of chromosomes each, and there were no abnormalities.
So that you were genetically compatible, if you like. So they were looking to see if that was a reason why maybe embryos weren't forming, or embryos weren't continuing to a viable pregnancy.
And then we went into the room with the doctor, and she was like, I don't think you'll need IVF. We will find out why this isn't happening. We will fix it. You'll go home. You'll get pregnant. That's what she said. Oh, we were like, great. So she said, right, I'm going to do your scan now. So I went to do the scan. So it was really uncomfortable. And then she was talking in Greek to the two people that were in the room very, very quickly. And I was like, oh God, what's going on? And then she tried to pass a catheter into my uterus through my cervix and couldn't. And the water just kept coming out. And I was like, oh, okay, this happened to my friend and her fallopian tubes were blocked. And so she has to have IVF. She said, I'm going to try again. Please just relax as much as you can. So she ended up getting the catheter in. That was fine. Blah, blah, blah. She went, right, come back to the office. So I went back to the office and she went, I think you're going to need IVF. And we're like, oh no. But she said, we're going to do a hysteroscopy, but you're going to have a hysteroscopy. Come to the hospital, go to the hospital now, have all these tests, go to the hospital at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's a really quick procedure. And then you'll be able to go about your day and you'll come back later that day. We'll give you the results and we'll form a plan. Right. Okay. So we tootled to the hospital. Had all these tests. The hospital was the only place that my weight was mentioned. They asked me how much I weigh. This was a test. That was it. They didn't weigh me. They didn't question it. I think if I hadn't known my weight, they probably would have weighed me, but I did know my weight. So that was fine. So the next morning, went to have the surgery. I still didn't really know what was going to happen. Like, I just knew that they were going to be doing something with my uterus. So then we got a taxi back to the clinic and and the doctor who had seen me the whole time, she did the hysteroscopy. So like, it was immediate. Oh, and during this time, so the day before, Ben had to give a semen sample as well. So we went back in the room and they showed us the video of my hysteroscopy, which is absolutely fascinating. Like, so amazing just to see what was in there. And basically, I have Asherman syndrome, which means that it's just a huge amount of scarring in my uterus. Like, I can't tell you how much scarring there was. You can see it. But it was like in a horror movie when there's like cobwebs in a cave. That's what it looked like. There was just scar tissue everywhere. Both my fallopian tubes were blocked. So that's great. But my uterus was also quite low oxidization. So it looked quite, basically the bits that should be pink were white and the bits that should be white were pink. So it was the wrong round. So she said, you can see on this video all of the scar tissue. And this scar tissue happens with a D&C, a miscarriage, surgery, not had any of those things. Potentially I've had a missed miscarriage. I don't think I have. I've never had a positive test. Or infection. So it's likely I've had several infections over the years, but would never have caught them because I was asymptomatic. And it's caused all this scar tissue in my uterus. And she said, you would never have got pregnant. It's not a place where an embryo can A, implant, or B, if it did implant, develop, because it just isn't a healthy environment for it to be in. But to be honest with you, I don't even think sperm would have got to your egg. Like, there was so much scarring. And the fact that my cervix, she couldn't get a catheter in my cervix, there was scarring over my cervix as well. So they got rid of all of it. She got rid of all of it. She's like, yeah, we've got rid of it all. So there's no reason why you shouldn't get pregnant now. Done. I was like, all right, okay. So I'm not going to recommend IVF yet, but because of your age, go home, try for a few months, come back to us middle of next year if you're not successful. Anyway, she turned to Ben and said, you've got super sperm, you're an amazing specimen, blah, blah, blah,
Thank
blah,
you.
blah. So I was like, okay. And I think that's why she was so confident in saying to us, there should be no reason now, because his sperm is so strong. I was literally the reason. Like, I was creating a barrier to the sperm not being able to get to where it needed to get to.
And also they do like extensive semen testing. It's not the baseline stuff.
Everything was in like the 99th percentile, like all of the tests they did. I think the only thing that was below was, there was one thing that was slightly below, which was like, it's not something to worry about because everything else is so good.
So good.
So yeah, so they gave us a whole bag of pills. And basically when they did the hysteroscopy, they also took a biopsy of my uterus to make sure that the microbiome, healthy bacteria, like that kind of stuff. So they did a biopsy as well and did extensive testing on the environment. That came back. I didn't have any infections at the time. That doesn't mean that I haven't had infections in the past. And because of the amount of scarring, I've definitely had infections and just not known about it. So the biome came back that I was slightly low oxidization. So I had to take a few like healthy, a bit like Activia for your stomach, like that, but for your uterus and vagina.
You've got
So they gave, but I did take like a low level antibiotic, and they told me to buy some supplements to then take the supplements. Yeah.
So at this point, we're years into trying to conceive, and how quickly from going to that clinic did you get answers? Oh yeah,
8.5 years. So yeah, I mean, we went for the tests beginning of November, and I think we got our results end of November, like the last results. I mean, we got everything. We got 90% of the results when we were there. But I don't think they were that worried. Like, they were very much like, it's fixed what was wrong. So
yeah. I mean, all that time, and like how quick, even if we say that took a month, because I'll be honest, it isn't always that quick getting answers to people, but certainly it's quick. To kind of, as in terms of comparatively to people who've tried to organise this kind of testing in the UK, like, it just doesn't happen that quickly. It's extremely expensive, and there are not many clinics that offer this type of treatment and exploration for unexplained infertility. So when they found the scarring, because I know I remember you saying to me, it's going to sound a bit weird, but I kind of want them to be a reason. I want them to be a reason, but obviously something that can be fixed. Do you remember saying?
Yeah.
So even when they found the scarring, like, what did that feel like?
So even when we were sat there waiting to go in, we kept saying, finding something is a positive. Finding something is what we want. To walk away without an answer would be the most heartbreaking thing, or to walk away with there's no reason, that would be so much worse.
Yeah.
So when they told us, I was like, oh my God, we need to tell everyone. We need to tell everyone. Everyone needs to know. And she was very black and white with us. Like, she said, IVF would never have worked. You could have gone for IVF in the UK. It never would have worked. You would have wasted your money. And I had a pelvic scan in the UK, but you wouldn't pick that up on a pelvic scan. Like, there must be so many people that, go into IVF with unexplained infertility and then it still doesn't work. And I still don't think there would be an exploration of why it's not working. It's just like, oh, okay, go again.
Yeah, and I think that's not just on the NHS. I think that is private too. And just imagine if you guys had like you to punish yourself to try and get down to lose 10 stone to then go and have treatment. How much time that would have taken first up. Then to go to the NHS and have, I don't know how many rounds you would have qualified for, but to have your free treatment on the NHS, which would not have worked. So that would have been traumatic. More time would have been marching on. Then if you'd have gone to a private clinic, so you could have spent lots of time, lots of money, just throwing money at IVF that was never going to work.
Yeah.
And, the fact that you were able to find out what the primary issue was while you were there within days, and have all of your results back in a month, and to have a clinic that says, actually, we think that you should try naturally for a period of time. IVF is there as an option, but actually, if you end up having IVF, then you are going to move into that process knowing that everything's been looked at. You feel happy and confident when you move into having IVF, if it gets to that point. So, like, money well spent, isn't it?
Yeah. So every stage that I get to, that's the next stage, I'm like, that's the goal. The next stage is the goal. So like for now, the goal is to get pregnant. That's the goal. The goal isn't having a baby, which might sound really weird to people. But for me, the goal is to get a positive pregnancy test. And then we go to the next goal, which
maybe
is
it's easier though to compartmentalize things sometimes, I think, because it can be overwhelming to think about everything forevermore, can't it?
Yeah.
I just think to myself that while it's hard to hear there's something wrong, and I speak to people who and they'll say to me, I was scared about finding out there's going to be something wrong and it being the end of the road. And, I understand that. But we need to know what is happening. And for lots of people, it is not the end of the road. And for lots of people, it's easy to fix things. But it's better to know, I think, than just be constantly wondering, questioning. You know, it's exhausting and it's wasting people's time. And you don't want to waste your money on things that aren't going to work. But my experience of when I've worked with clients in Unexplained Infertility is that they've all been super pleased they've done it because they've got answers. And then for lots of them, not all, but lots of them have gone on then to get pregnant and have babies, whether that's naturally through IVF or through donor conception. But they have answers. So they're no longer stuck in limbo and they're no longer spending money potentially or spending their time and energy, not wondering what on earth is going on.
Yeah. Yeah, defo.
Which is hideous, isn't it? And as well, I suppose, for you, Zoe, it's another confirmation that BMI was not the issue. I know you didn't think it was.
Yeah.
But, this confirms that BMI is not your issue.
No. And it's never been mentioned.
I've never had any client where it is the issue. Never seen that. And it's all too often used when it's just kind of get out of jail when people don't really know, or they don't have the resources, or they're just trying to kind of send people on the way.
Well, I've got a friend, and you probably know her, who had triplets maybe 4 years ago this year, who has a bigger body. And the only reason, so she carried those triplets to 36 weeks, which is like unheard of. And the only reason she was able to do that was because she was in a bigger body. Like, she gave her babies the very best start in life and kept them safe because she had a bigger body and was able to do that. And, doctors will celebrate that when it suits them. But that before she had them, and they were natural, like there was no IVF involved. But she was basically told, stop trying, it's not going to happen. And so BMI is never the problem.
And just because a medical professional is saying that to you doesn't mean it's true. And I hate that is the case, because we should be able to trust doctors. But I suppose all we're here to say is that there are options. You can get a second opinion. You don't have to take what one person says as verbatim. Obviously the NHS has very strict guidelines. It's all about money. We know that. And, it's about finding the right clinic. It's about finding the right doctor, the right team. You may have conversations around BMI, but that should be respectful. It should be non-judgmental. And if somebody's going to say to you that your BMI is the issue, there should be reasons behind that and evidence and support, not just a broad brush, like, come back when you've got to a BMI of. And, abroad, there are clinics that don't offer treatments at higher BMIs as well. So, you do that BMI discrimination abroad as well in some places, but there are absolutely facilities out there that can help you get to the bottom of unexplained infertility and treat you like a human being, regardless of the size of your body, which is the least interesting thing about any of us. And, people who are in bigger bodies get pregnant and have babies all of the time.
Yeah. And also, I really want to make it super clear, like, my GP, I know he might be, this is probably another reason why, like, I've never thought my weight was a problem. Like, he is so body neutral.
Yeah.
Like, he's so like, weight isn't a thing. Like, weight's really not a thing. Like, don't worry about it. But I know how extremely lucky I am to have him as my GP, because in the clinic, like, the nurses don't share that opinion. When Ben goes to see them, he went to speak to them about going on a GLP-1 for his weight, and they said, we can't prescribe it to you because you're a type 1 diabetic, and then spent 10 minutes telling him that he needed to lose weight. And he's like, that's why I'm here. I want to lose weight. So I understand that I am in a very privileged situation where my doctor is very much like, weight is not the problem. And I know not everyone's experience will be like that.
Because it shouldn't be a privilege, should it? That should be the experience. As someone in a big body, and having worked with lots of people in bigger bodies, everyone will say to me, like, we don't mind having conversations around our BMI, as long as it's done respectfully, and as long as people give us evidence and reasons and not just make broad brush statements.
Yes, 100%. The problem that I struggle with is with Clomid, the reason why they don't prescribe it to people with higher BMIs is because they need more. It's not because it doesn't work. And often I think the excuse is it doesn't work with people in bigger bodies. It's like, no, they need more, so it costs you more, and that's why you're not happy. And with IVF, you need sedation or anesthesia, you need more when you have a bigger body. So it's always cost rather than anything else. But that isn't the conversation that's had. The conversation that's had is, it won't work because you're bigger, not it costs us more because you're bigger. And I think that's I only know that because of the research that I've done. And, a lot of people probably wouldn't even do that, because of how people trust doctors. And it's like, the doctor wants the best for me. Yes, they do, but they also have to. And it's not the doctor, it's the NHS as a whole. It's not the doctor.
Yeah. And we love the NHS and we're very grateful that we've got it. I don't understand how rules are different in different places. Well, I do, because there's different CCGs deciding on how to spend their money. That's care commissioning groups. But I think that is unfair. The postcode lottery is unfair. I understand that they have to have some rules, but I do think there's a massive systemic problem around fat phobia. People can't qualify for fertility treatment. I don't agree with that if somebody's fit and well. But we are where we are. That is the system. Waiting lists are getting longer. Things aren't getting better in that department. They are not going to change. They are not going to suddenly say to us all, we're all going to be qualified. Anybody can qualify for 3 rounds of IVF at the NHS. That isn't going to happen. If anything, things are going to get tighter.
Yeah.
So, it's about people, I think, being aware of that. I've had people come to me and say they've been on a waiting list to see a consultant, and they even thought, because why would you not think that first conversation was going to be like booking them in for IVF, only to realise that was them being told they weren't going to qualify, when actually the GP will have known that. And, if they could have just given the heads up about that, then they might have decided to go in a different direction. And I think that's the bit that, we could do with a massive, massive improvement in just a bit more transparency and not sending people on the way without any direction of where to go, which is what happened to us. We just felt completely lost. And I spent so much time blaming myself for being in a bigger body. And it had absolutely nothing to do with the reason why we couldn't conceive. Like I said, for so many people, it's the same. But I blamed myself. And that had a massive impact on me. And I wasted a lot of time. And that's the bit that I just find so difficult. And, obviously you've gone abroad and you've finally got answers. And, not easy to be told that there's something wrong. But you wanted to know what was wrong. You got the answers. You got the fix, and you were told, you've got a chance now to conceive naturally. If not, we can help you with IVF. If not, you can take all of these results and records and information and you can have IVF in the UK. But you come away and you've got a plan, and, helps you then to move forward feeling more confident in the immediate next steps and perhaps IVF or whatever, comes later on down the line, maybe. And I think it's just so important that people get that clarity, and then they can decide what they want to do, what is right for them.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got everything that we need to make the decisions that we probably are going to have to make in the summer if I don't get pregnant naturally. And I can be confident in having those conversations. Like for us, we would definitely go back to Greece. Like being in the UK isn't even an option that we would consider. Not least because even the cost. So why wouldn't I? Yeah.
But I suppose what I'm saying is you've got the option, haven't you? You don't have to. Some people still want to have their IVF in the UK.
Yeah.
But they want the testing, or they want the testing to then look at whether they can actually continue trying naturally. So you can absolutely go and have testing done abroad. You're not committed to having to have IVF with these clinics as well.
Absolutely not. And I think, but I think a lot of people go to have the testing almost like as like a little tester for themselves of like, would we like to be here? Would this is this where we want to be? And then when you go and you're like, oh, this is amazing. Yeah. Why wouldn't I want to be here?
Especially now looking out the window and it's like grey and wet and cold. If there's one piece of advice you would want to give anyone listening to who this episode has resonated with, what would it be?
Don't take your infertility as being unexplained. There will be a reason for it. Go and find out what that reason is, whatever that reason might be.
And is there anything that you wish that you'd have done earlier?
All of it.
All of it?
I wish that we'd started I wish I'd known that diagnostic testing was an option, and I would have done that in 2023. And I would have given myself 2 extra years.
Yeah, and again, and I've laboured on about this loads on this podcast, but I don't think that's your responsibility anyway, because I think you've also not been guided well for a lot of your journey. So you don't know what you don't know.
No.
And we do trust what doctors tell us. So that's how a lot of people end up in that situation. I mean, you've made decisions that are best for you with the information that you had at the time at every step. Thank you, Zoe, for being here. Like, I really honestly think that this will help so many people from like so many different situations, people with higher BMIs, people who've been told that things are unexplained, people who haven't been told anything and they're just sat on waiting lists, people who are struggling to get pregnant, never been pregnant, people who are able to get pregnant and sadly are unable to get to a live birth. I'm really hoping that this has opened up people's eyes to what is possible and that, there will be a reason. You can get answers and help is out there. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is the end of the road. But either way, you're going to get answers and you deserve that and you need that.
Yeah.
And also, I want people to hear that you don't have to jump straight into IVF either.
I think that's really important that people take a moment to think, do we actually want to go with IVF if there's a possibility that it's not going to be successful? Because I had to do, so when I found out like what was going on with me, but her saying you never would have got pregnant and IVF would never have worked. I don't think doctors use absolutes lightly, and that really was an absolute, like it never would have worked. So if you've been trying for a little bit and you're thinking IVF is maybe the next option, go for the diagnostics first because you might not need IVF. And I think a lot of clinics would take you down the IVF route first. I had such a great experience that I would go back there if I wanted IVF. I definitely felt like we got the answers that we wanted. We can continue. In my heart of hearts, do I think we'll end up having IVF? Yes. I think that is probably going to be where we end up. But I feel like I've put my body in the best place to be able to have IVF successfully.
Yeah.
So, and also the other thing that I really liked, I will just shout them out for this. I was never made to feel inferior or uncomfortable or anything like that. It was always, it always felt very safe. And Ben was with me the whole time. Everyone that I saw was so kind and so nice. Like, you deserve to have a baby kind of thing. And so, it felt very kind and nurturing and loving being there. So I shout them out to everyone
which is how it should be. Though I know lots of people's, if they're in a heterosexual couple, the male partner will have had a baseline like a semen analysis and told there's no issues. And then what happens often to people is the focus is just on the female partner. And then the kind of male feels ignored, but also things aren't explored on the male side. And this is a 50-50 equation.
Yeah.
So it's important that both, if you're in a heterosexual couple, that both of you have, significant testing so that both sides are looked at, which again should be basics.
When Ben had his tests in the UK, they didn't come back as like exemplary. There was a problem. I think it was here, they were a bit lazy. But again, like when he had his tests in the UK, like not to get too graphic about it, he wasn't given any guidelines of like abstaining or what he had to do beforehand. Whereas when we went to Greece, he was given these really clear things of like, you can't do this, you can't do this, do this, do this. And he was given so many guidelines of like what he had to do to give a good sample. So yeah, I feel like everyone who wants to have a baby, there'll be a reason why it's not happening and you should explore why. Don't just take the basics as like, oh, you're fine, it's unexplained. I don't believe that there is an unexplained infertility thing.
No, it's just unexplored or not explored enough in the right places.
Yeah, defo.
Well, thank you so much again, Zoe. I really appreciate you coming on. It's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're not at the end of your trying to conceive journey. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me. I just want everyone to know that this is an option and that they should explore if they need to.
Yes, me too. And if this episode has resonated with you and you're unsure about if you've had the right investigations and you are interested in exploring things properly, then I will pop the details of how you can get in touch if you want to have a chat about what it looks like to work with me in the show notes. Until next week, I will speak to you soon. Thanks, Zoe. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
If you are facing more obstacles than options and want to learn more about how to overcome your fertility testing and treatment challenges in your home country so that you too can fast track to growing your family and on your terms, then check out my free training at